Good evening and welcome to the Monday, April 26th, 2021 meeting of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education. In accordance with the state Sunshine Law of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education was provided on April 16th and April 22nd to the Hillsborough Beacon and the Courier News. Mr. Mahmood, may we please have a roll call?
Surely. Mr. Gillette?
Here.
Mr. Kidd?
Here.
Mr. Marini?
Here.
Mrs. Maroon?
Here.
Mrs. Nurse?
Here.
Mr. Oliver?
Here.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Here.
Mrs. Stats?
Here.
And Ms. Trujillo?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Mahmood. May we now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the correspondence that's listed in item 4.1. And also I'd like to thank the folks who gave input to the 2021-2022 budget via the Google form on our website. With respect to the correspondence that we've received, I responded to most of them that were not related to either the cyber attack and spring break, but to the other things regarding the budget. I think there was one, Mr. Sloan, on March 30th. I just responded today. And to the students who spoke at the last board meeting, March 26th, we had canceled the April 12th board meeting. So now I'd like to turn it over to the superintendent for the public hearing on the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. So as we talked about several weeks ago with the tentative budget, when Mr. Mahmood and Mrs. San Giuliano and I presented the tentative budget, this is our night for presenting the final budget to the public. So we're going to get started right away on that. We talked last time about our budget calendar, and the budget calendar remained largely intact. We do begin planning for the new budget cycle, the October of the current school year, which we did. Public input began early. And then throughout the year, business administrator, assistant business administrator, and meet with the budget managers. We review it. We review it with the committee meeting, with the board committees in February and March. And we present the draft tentative budget in March. And here we are in April to either implement any adjustments or revisions from the tentative budget to the final budget, or present as we discussed the first time. Again, I'd like to thank the board and every budget manager for helping us to develop a very balanced and responsible budget. We'd like to thank our union and our association representatives for helping us realize savings in terms of quality healthcare, continuing and monitoring our quality healthcare. And any of the budget resolutions on tonight's agenda include the final budget approval and budget lease financing. These are things that we have to do by law. And so we move them forward in the manner in which we must for the organization. Our budget goals for 21-22 included the maintenance of our current programs and maintaining all positions. It was very important to us not to cut any positions. Minimizing significant appropriation reductions for each of the budget managers and providing a thorough and efficient education for all of our students. We wanted to maintain class size and utilize any reserves where possible. And quite frankly, Mr. Mahmood and Mrs. San Giuliano were able to do that quite well. Our district enrollment remained as you see there. There was a difference. We lost some students, mostly due to COVID. We know exactly where these students went. Some of them went to other school districts, just they moved and they went to other school districts. We did have a number go to private schools or were homeschooled. So when we developed the budget, we wanted to take a look at our 2019 enrollment figures as opposed to 2020, because we do believe that the 2020 figures they're not our real figures. They are the figures that were intact at that time, but we know we lost a number of students. We also know that we're going to be getting those students back, and we've already begun to realize some of those returns. Mr. Mahmood.
Thank you, Dr. Antunes. The next page talks a little bit about a budget overview, which gives us the difference in which our budget was in 2021 versus 21-22. So for the general fund, we are increasing that by $1.3 million. For our grants and entitlements, we're increasing by $87,179. And at the grant level, that's only budgeted at 85%. So there'll be an extra difference, a little bit greater, that we got from grants. Our debt services going up by 140,000. So altogether between last year's budget and this year's budget, the increase is a net of $1.5 million. On the next slide, we're talking a little bit about our budget revenue highlights. One of the things that the board was able to do here is we were able to stay within our 2% cap. We did not exceed the cap, whereas sometimes school districts are able to exceed the cap by taking a health benefits waiver or an enrollment adjustment. Our board we were not able to do that, but we didn't choose to do that. I believe we wouldn't have, even if we had the opportunity. We did, with state aid reductions, we were originally projected for a $1.3 million reduction. We received a $694,000 reduction. No reduction in my eyes is good. However, if it's less than what we projected, it was helpful. We are withdrawing $500,000 from maintenance reserve in this budget. We are also withdrawing $600,000 for the HES roofing and paving project. The rest of that money, besides the reserve money that we're pulling out, will be used that we budgeted for the rest of the funds to be able to cover the paving of the roof. For pay to play, there will be no increase. For our technology Chromebook insurance and our summer rentals, there'll also be no increase for our parents. The main drivers on this budget, so the public has an opportunity to understand how the budget is broken down, 75% it goes to the general fund budget, that's salaries and benefits. 6% is the total that's for the busing, for transportation. 3% of our budget goes towards special education, and 4% of the budget goes towards buildings and grounds. We did the expenditures, now we'll do the revenue, or we did the revenue, now we'll do the expenditure highlights. We did have an extensive savings as we move and transition into the state health benefits plan. We are, as Dr. Antuna says, we are very grateful that all of our programs will remain intact. We are making no recommendations for any staff reductions in this budget. As a matter of fact, we are adding 4 additional teaching positions. We are adding 1 community outreach coordinator, and based on IEP mandates, we are adding special ed positions, which includes 4 teachers, 3 instructional assistants, I believe, and that's it, all based on IEP mandates. We are supporting curriculum revision for science, which is really great. We're able to do that. We are in this budget, which is historically not the case. We did it last year for the first year. We are accounting for part of our breakage in order to balance this budget without letting staff go. We did in this budget also put extra funds available for PPE and other COVID-related expenses. As I mentioned earlier, we are including year one of the lease payment for the HES paving and roof replacement. And finally, in this budget, there are 4 new buses that generated for us a net savings that we are purchasing to run in-house. The tax impact is extremely promising for the average homeowner, both in Hillsborough and Millstone. So for the average homeowner in Hillsborough, the school tax rate actually decreased. We went from 1.588 to 1.560. The average household at $426,224 will see a tax decrease on the school tax side of $120 a year and approximately $10 a month. This is the second year that there is a school tax rate decrease. For Millstone residents, it's even a little bit larger in terms of the reduction. For 2021, the school tax rate is 1.229. And originally it was for this year it was 1.568. So there is a reduction in their tax rate. The average household for Millstone at 339,425 will see a tax decrease at approximately 1,151 per year and $96 a month. You can go to the next slide. That's is that you, Dr. Drew? Is that me? That's okay.
So, as Mr. Mahmood explained, due to the significant savings from the transition to the SCHBP, the state health benefits, we were able to help sustain programs and positions. We are anticipating another state aid reduction next year of $1.2 million. That can result in some of the things that we were able to maintain this year. That could result in programs being reduced. It can result in positions being reduced. That's never our goal. And of course, we will continue our work with the legislators to try to receive additional state aid or to decrease our reduction that we've been slotted. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Antunes and Mr. Mahmood. That was for your excellent presentations. So are we now taking board comments and public comments and then going to the vote? Okay.
Yes.
So I'd like to open it up to the board members for any comments or questions on the budget. And am I seeing none from board members? Oh, Ms. Stats first and then Mr. Kidd.
I just want to say I appreciate the work that everyone who has worked on the budget, especially so that we could increase the number of teachers by 4, as well as other things like the science curriculum and professional development, which all of that will serve our students better. So thank you for all your work to make that happen.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Stats. Mr. Kidd. Mr. Kidd.
I had a quick question about the funding for PPE and other sanitization related to COVID, the funding for that. In the event that for whatever reason things go really well and we end up full-time, no funding has to go for that, is there a protocol established for where that funding will go?
So typically, Mr. Kidd, when funds in a particular earmarked account are not expended, what we try to do is put that into surplus, overall surplus for school district. That gives the board an opportunity later in the year, or possibly next June, to vote on putting money into cap reserve, maintenance reserve, like we did in the past. So there is, we don't earmark exactly by month what we don't spend, but overall at the net, Mr. Kidd, at the end of the day, we do try to then recommend to the board sort of to deposit more money into cap reserve that we can use for capital projects. So we will definitely use it, you know, in a place that is a need for the district moving forward.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the board? Seeing none, then I'd like to turn it over to the members of the public who are in the room for public comments on the budget. Ms. DeVincent, is that? Yes, okay. Let me promote you to panelists. All right.
All right, guys. I want to see this. Okay. Sorry. Can I minimize this so I can read it? Can I minimize this so I can read it? Can you do it for me so I can? Is that right?
I just put a little mark to say ask to start video. Maybe that would find it.
There. Thank you. I got it. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay, good evening. My name is Robin DeVincent, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Sunnymead. and my hope today is before voting on this budget that you go back and look at our current elementary class sizes. So around 2 years ago, I had spoke to the board about my concerns when Dr. Schiff and the board were considering making huge budget cuts whereby class sizes would increase because positions were being cut. And I knew then that once the board increased the maximum students per class, this could become the status quo moving forward. I was not wrong. So let me take you back so you understand fully how things have changed. Prior to the budget cuts, the status quo was kindergarten, first and second grade. The max was 22 students, and third and fourth grade max was 25 students. This was the norm, and our district took pride in these numbers because they knew it benefited all of our students' educational needs. And when Henry Goodhue had asked at a recent board meeting about class sizes, the board said that the class sizes would be normal. So my question is, what is normal? It seems that your current board decision to continue the status quo that was made during major budget cuts over 2 years ago is the new norm. That would mean that kindergarten and first grade would have a max of 22 students, which is the same as in the past. However, second grade would increase from 22 students to 25 students per class, and third and fourth grade students, which used to be 25 students per class, would now increase to 27. Now, you may think that 2 or 3 students would not have made a difference, but I'm here to tell you it absolutely does. Currently, in order to receive a new third or fourth grade section, the entire grade needs to have 27 students per class. Another major concern is the time frame in which a new section can be added. Typically in August, we get an influx of new students. Excuse me. However, Dr. Schiff used to make August 1st the cutoff for adding a section. And typically, like 2 days later, we would get more students and we could not do anything about it. I am not sure if Dr. Antunes will do the same, and I'm sure it's up to her discretion. A solution may be to allow for the sections to be changed a week before the placement letters go home to the parents. In the past, whenever our numbers were getting close to the maximum class size, principals would make 2 plans. One where the students were split into existing classes, and the other, if we got a new section, would be saved for the new section if we were to need it. So if the board will not consider decreasing the maximum class numbers, then I propose that we extend the deadline to later in August to allow class sizes to not exceed our current amount. I currently have 26 students. Our classes were not built to hold that many students. And if they were all in my class now, I would not have enough space to hold morning meetings on my back carpet, nor would I have as much time per student to conference with them. Now remember, these are 9 and 10-year-olds. So even if all you care about is that they can physically fit in my room, I probably could make it work by removing more furniture and other resources. But that is not what teaching should be about. The entire district is seeing a rise in class sizes with less resources. It's not a secret when we reduce class size, we increase student achievement. So I'm asking the board to revisit the budget and put back in place what was once. When we took these huge cuts, it affected teachers and students. It puts undue stress on everybody involved. It increases our workload and decreases our time with each student. Class size matters, especially when we have so many needs, and we want all our students to find success and be lifelong learners. So parents, if you're listening tonight, please ask the board to make sure our class size amounts are reduced back to where it was before, or at least consider making the deadline mid-August to add a new section. Your child is worth that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Vincent. Are there any other comments from the public that are in the room? Seeing none, then I will go to the room. Ms. Desai, I will promote you to panelist. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Desai, if you'd state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mona Desai. I am at 23 Bombway. I currently have a 4th grader in Woods Road and a 5th grader in Aris. So thank you for presenting the budget. My question is related to the inclusion of the curriculum revision in the budget. Can you please speak more about what this curriculum inclusion is, as I've not seen it on the agenda? Is it related to the removal of the advanced classes? And how will that impact incoming 5th graders and rising 6th graders? this is a serious concern for all parents because advanced learning should be an opportunity that should be provided to all students who are capable of receiving it. If the district's concern is that it is not challenging enough or that it somehow discriminates against other students, then please look at providing alternate options for children who fall in the different categories. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Desai. Are there any other comments from participants in the Zoom room on the school budget? Seeing none, I will now close public comment on the budget. And did you want to address any of the items that?
I will simply affirm for Mrs. Desai that none of the curriculum revision has anything to do with
work being done at On-Road right now. Completely different. We're on a 5-year curriculum revision cycle, and that's what we're working with.
Two totally separate things. That's it.
It's a little muffled, but you're okay. It was heard, but a little muffled.
Thank you very much, Dr. Antunes. Are there any other comments from the board before Mr. Gillette, please?
So I just had a question for, I guess, for Dr. Antunes. Do we have, and forgive me, I should know this. Do we have, are class sizes for the various grades set in any policy that the board votes on? Okay.
Yes.
So we have,
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other, oh, Mr. Pulsifer, please.
Sorry, I forgot to mention before. This is as much, I guess, as we roll through this year and plan for next, and where we go for the following year. Even I've mentioned this before, and I'm still concerned that given the effect on business in the state throughout the pandemic, that state tax revenue will be down when this year wraps, and probably will be down next year also. I'm concerned that the lack of tax revenue will easily translate into broader cuts to education funding. And I think that's something we need to stay on top of. I think it probably doesn't impact this budget, or hopefully doesn't impact this budget. But I think as we work through this budget and plan for the next one, we really need to keep that thought in mind as to where the state will be headed based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer, for that sobering reminder. Okay, seeing no other comments, then Mr. Mahmood, if we could have a roll call. Now, are we going to also do 5.3, the motion together?
Yes.
Okay,
5.2 and 5.3.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Mahmood.
Do you want me to make that motion?
Sure, please.
Okay, sure. The superintendent recommends that
Should be in the
Superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the motions 5.2 to approve the 2021-2022 school budget, and 5.3 motion to approve the 2021-2022 school budget lease financing as listed.
May I have a motion in a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Stats.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Any discussion beyond? Okay, then Mr. Mahmood, if we could have a roll call, please. Thank you.
Absolutely, President Trujillo. Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mr. Kidd?
Yes.
Mr. Marini?
Yes.
Mrs. Maroon?
Yes.
Mrs. Nurse?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Mrs. Stats?
Yes.
And Ms. Trujillo?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you and congratulations.
Thank
you. Dr. Antunes, for your superintendent's report?
Yes, so I do have a superintendent's report. However, part of it is Dr. Feltry will present the school performance report, keeping in mind that students did not test last year. So we believe this is a compliance issue with the state that we have to put out there. The education committee did see it. And so she's gonna quickly go through the presentation for the Hillsborough school performance report. Dr. Feltry.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please.
The school performance reports are open for public viewing by going to the school performance reports homepage, and data in the summary reports are limited for the 2019-2020 school year due to COVID-19. Next slide, please. After this presentation, most likely tomorrow, this PowerPoint will be posted on the district website on the curriculum instruction webpage. Next slide, please. COVID-19 significantly impacted the state's ability to measure school performance and student achievement during the 1920 school year. Therefore, some data that is typically reported is not available. The NJDOE, the Board of Education, and the district recognize that our existing data cannot begin to measure the hard work and perseverance of the students, families, educators, and community members during this very difficult year. Next slide. The school performance reports typically include data for the categories listed in this slide. The asterisks indicate the data that will not be available and will not be reported in this presentation. Statewide assessments were canceled in spring 2020. As a result, statewide assessment data is not available, and subsequently, student growth percentiles were not calculated for 2019-2020. The requirement to report on chronic absenteeism and related accountability measures for the 2019-2020 school year was waived. As a result, there is no report on chronic absenteeism or other attendance data for the 2019-2020 school year. And the requirement to calculate indicator scores, summative scores, and progress towards long-term goals and interim progress was waived for the 2019-2020 school year. So this data is not included in this report. This table shows the percentage of students by student group for the past 3 school years. Enrollment data reflects enrollment reported at the end of the school year and only includes students attending the schools. Students that attend programs outside the district are not included in enrollment counts and percentages. Next slide, please. These graphs illustrate trends in student growth over the last 3 years. Student growth is measured by median student growth percentile. The table shows us how student growth over the last 3 years compared to the statewide median. Our students consistently performed above the statewide median for both ELA and math, except for an implementation dip the year we revised the ELA curriculum to be in alignment with the NJSLS, and the state was transitioning from Part to NJSLA, and there was a disconnect between the standards and the actual assessment. Important note for 1920 is stated below, due to the cancellation of, or stated before, due to the cancellation of statewide assessments as a result of the pandemic, student growth percentiles were not calculated and are not reported in this table. So the table only shows 1718 and 1819 data. These graphs show trends in the proficiency rate for federal accountability over the last 3 years and shows the percentage of students that met or exceeded expectations on assessments. The expectation is that a minimum of 95% of the students participate, and the table shows that our students consistently performed well above the state proficiency of the number of students who met or exceeded expectations. And due to the cancellation of the statewide assessments and the March 2020 federal waiver as a result of the pandemic, there are no scores for 1920. Graduation rates are calculated using the adjusted cohort graduation rate calculation, which all schools are required to use. A student is counted as a graduate in a given school year if they earned a state-endorsed diploma by August 31st. The state-endorsed diploma is awarded to students who meet both course requirements and graduation assessment requirements. Governor Murphy signed Executive Order 117 on April 7, 2020, which waived the graduation assessment requirement for any 12th grader last year. And these graphs show the 4-year and 5-year adjusted cohort graduation rates for the most recent 3 cohorts of students. The table shows our graduation rate is higher than the statewide graduation rate. This table shows the percentage of cohort 2020 graduates that met high school graduate requirements through each type of graduation pathway for both ELA and math. The goal is for as many students as possible to meet the graduation requirements using the statewide assessment. The table shows that we are indeed above the state percentage for students successfully meeting the graduation requirement using the statewide assessment and below the state percentage for alternative assessment pathways, which is where we want to be. As noted prior, Executive Order 117 was waived waived the graduation assessment requirement for any 12th grader. So you can see on the last line that there's an additional option, pathway option of requirements waived under Executive Order 117 to reflect these students who met the graduation requirements through that pathway. Next slide, please. The requirement to report on chronic absenteeism was waived for the 1920 school year. As a result, chronic absenteeism and other attendance data is not included in these reports. Teacher diversity improves outcomes for all students. This table and graph both show that there is greater student diversity in our classrooms than teacher diversity in schools across the state. And this table and graph both show that there is greater student diversity in our classrooms than teacher diversity in our schools. We are continuing our efforts to increase the diversity of our teaching force. This table shows the number of students in full day and half day pre-K and kindergarten for the past 3 school years. We have half day programs in Hillsborough. Our full day programs are found in our Title I schools as service to our most at-risk students for early intervention. COVID-19 impacted enrollment due to some parents disenrolling their child/children from public school. The college and career readiness table shows the percentage of our students compared to the state who followed the various college and career readiness indicators. We have a greater percentage of students taking the SAT, ACT, and AP courses than the state. In 2019, we had a lower percentage of students enrolled in dual enrollment than the state, but over the last several years, we have increased the number of courses and students who participate in dual enrollment courses. The seal of biliteracy identifies graduating high school students who are able to demonstrate proficiency in English in addition to 1 or more languages. National administrations of the SAT, PSAT, and ACT were canceled in the spring and summer of 2020, and as a result, the 1920 results may not be comparable to prior and future years. And College Board administered AP tests online in the spring of 2020, and students were able to take assessments at home. The college and career readiness section includes participation in visual and performing arts coursework for students in grades 6 through 12. In grades 6 through 8, students cycle through related arts, and in high school, these courses become electives. We do not have a dance or drama program at the middle or high school levels. Next slide, please. This table shows the number of incidents reported by type. The last row shows the rate of incidents for every 100 students enrolled and provides an indicator of how we compare to the state. As can be seen, we have a very low rate of incidents in our district. Next slide, please. This table shows ratios of students and staff members in the district compared to the state. Numbers in green indicate that we have a better ratio than the state, and numbers in red indicate that we have a worse ratio than the state. The data indicate that we have fewer administrators, nurses, and child study team members compared to the state. Next slide, please. This table shows the percentage of 2019 high school graduates enrolled in post-secondary institutions by the fall of 2020. In the racial groups with a large enough sample size, a greater percentage of Hillsborough students enroll in colleges and universities than students across the state. And next slide. Additional resources and information can be found by visiting these sites. Thank you.
That concludes Dr. Feltry's presentation. However, I'm happy to continue with my report if you'd like, or not. You know, unless I don't know if anybody has any questions for Dr. Feltry.
Oh, Mr. Pulsifer?
When you were discussing the arts, I believe you said that we do not have a dance or drama program. Just to avoid any confusion, I believe what you mean is we do not have classes for dance and drama, because certainly we have many stage productions and we have intramural or outside of classroom dance programs. So that's specifically saying that we do not have classes in those subject areas.
Correct.
All right,
correct. Yep.
Thank you for your clarification. Are there any other questions from the board on the presentation? Seeing none, then Dr. Antunes, if you would continue. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mrs. Trejo. Okay, so moving on with the superintendent's report. So everybody is aware that the district was a victim of cyber attack last 2 Mondays ago. And regarding the impact of the cyber attack, the district has experienced, we continue to work behind the scenes. And as of today, the restoration of our systems is almost complete. I cannot stress enough that this is an ongoing open investigation. I understand that people in the public were frustrated with the amount of information that we were not permitted to provide. However, when we're getting federal investigators involved, you do what they ask you to do. And so in order to protect the organization, that's exactly what we did. I would also like to remind all stakeholders that the integrity of student and school information is a top priority in addressing this matter. While the investigation is not yet concluded, to date, we have not found any indication to suggest unauthorized access to any student information. Hillsborough Township Public Schools strives to minimize the collection of student information and to store such information securely. We understand and share the concern you may have regarding your child or children's information. Should any information be found to have been accessed, we will promptly reach out to the families of those students or staff members to advise them. I would also be remiss if I didn't take a moment to recognize and thank parents, staff, and administrators for their continued support and patience, as well as the board throughout this process. Special gratitude to Joel Handler, our Director of Technology, and his senior systems team, the technology department. Simple words of thanks cannot describe how lucky we are to have such a dedicated, knowledgeable, and committed team of professionals. This seems to be an issue in Somerset County and across the state. We know for a fact. In fact, they tell us on our weekly calls, we talk to our cybersecurity experts several times a week. Joel speaks to them almost daily, that it's incredulous how quickly that our tech team was able to push the solution out and get kids back and teachers to teaching and kids to learning, albeit not in school, but virtually to only lose 1 day of school. I'm not sure that people recognize the impact of that and the gravitas of that statement. There are districts that are still out 2 weeks, that their teachers haven't been able to teach and students haven't been able to learn. I'd also like to take a moment to update the community on our continued phase-in, phase-up approach in the reopening of our schools. So Monday, April 19th was the final phase-in of students in grades 7 to 12 returning to 4-day learning. Again, this was in the midst of our cyber attack. The fact that we were able to still have our students come back to school on that date as scheduled is phenomenal. Despite the obstacles presented by the cyber attack, we were able to welcome over 1,700 students at the middle school and high school to 4-day in-person learning. Our total number of district students now attending 4 days is just over 4,000, or 55% of our total student population. I'd like to remind parents and students that we will continue to use Wednesdays as all virtual days until further notice. Apparently, there's a rumor out there that we were eliminating Wednesdays as virtual days like this week or next week. That is not the case. Does it mean it's off the table? No, it does not. Does it mean it's happening next week? It does not. Until further notice, we will continue to use Wednesdays as all virtual days. And I look forward to sharing next steps in the phase-in, phase-up process in the coming weeks. We continue to register kindergartners for September. If you experience problems registering during the last 2 weeks, Genesis is now up and running for registrations. If you don't hear from your schools, if you've registered and don't hear from your schools, please reach out. It's possible that we lost that information with the cyber attack. You may also request additional information on the district's Children at Play program during the pre-registration process. Some good news is, and it's a pleasure to share, that our Supervisor of Visual and Performing and Related Arts, Mr. Chris Ireland, shared some wonderful news with us. On March 29th, Hillsborough High School senior Sabrina Schubert was selected by the New Jersey Music Educators Association All-State Choral Procedures Committee as a 2021 recipient of a New Jersey Governor's Award for Arts and Education. Congratulations on your hard work, Sabrina. Additionally, Hillsborough Township Public Schools has been recognized by the National Association of Music Merchants as one of the best communities for music education in America. Mr. Ireland completed the application to recognize our outstanding music educators for their tireless efforts in bringing quality music education to our students in this year's challenging learning environment. Only 39 districts in New Jersey and 686 nationwide received this recognition. Kudos to our educators and to Mr. Ireland for bringing this honor to our district. Finally, I'd like to be cautiously optimistic in reminding the community that barring any additional unforeseen, out of our control circumstances requiring the district to use our last emergency day, at this time today at 8:11 on 4/26/2021, the schools will be closed on Friday, May 28th. I think we will all appreciate a 4-day weekend, so let's all keep our fingers crossed and keep everything out of Hillsborough that we can. Thank you, Mrs. Trujillo.
Thank you for the report, Dr. Antunes. And I wanted to also echo the board's thanks to our technology team that's led by Mr. Joel Handler. We greatly appreciate all the hard work and dedication that you and your staff have done for our district. So thank you. So moving on now to the committee reports, I would like to just take a few moments to report that we have dates, tentative dates of board members' availability on June and July for our district goal setting workshop, also known as the retreat. That we don't really like that word, but it's really a meeting to set the district goals for the following school year. I wanted to remind board members that their financial disclosure statements or surveys are due on April 30th, so as not to have any negative repercussions. And then I also wanted to remind, or actually let the board know, that the Garden State Coalition of Schools that the board is a member of is having its monthly meeting this Wednesday, April 28th at 9 a.m. And if you're interested in attending, just let me know and I will forward over that information to you. I would like to now report on actually, before I go into the governance committee report, I wanted to just give another brief update on the delegate assembly, which is coming up on May 17th, and Mr. Kidd will be the voting delegate this time. And I wanted to share with the board some information because I was on the resolution subcommittee, which unanimously approved the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education's resolution, which is proposing revised policy language to express the belief that it is important to cultivate inclusive, affirming, and welcoming school communities that contribute to the overall safety, pedagogy, and school climate, and to support and work with board members and school districts to create greater awareness to ensure continued safety, support, student engagement, and implementation of best practices and policies of all students, including those who are perceived as being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning, or who are LGBTQ+. And so at the next board meeting, I'd like for the board to discuss that resolution as to give guidance to Mr. Kidd when he is voting with the delegate assembly on May 17th. So moving on, I'd like to then report on the governance committee, which met during spring break on March 30th. And we reviewed the tentative budget in preparation for tonight's final budget approval. And we had some questions and clarifications on the state employee health benefit plan. We talked about state aid allocation per Mr. Pulsifer's comment tonight about potentially losing more state aid. And let me see. And then there was also a comment about whether or not there was a possibility of doing a March 2022 tax levy referendum that will bring the district to its local fair share, and that information will be discussed at the next governance committee. And then finally, the governance committee members were tasked with reviewing 3 bylaws: the bylaw 155 for board committees, 164 for the conduct of board meetings, and 167 on public participation in board meetings, which we will discuss at the next governance committee. And so that concludes my report on the governance. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Stats for the communications report and associated liaisons.
Thank you, Ms. Trio. The Communications Committee met on April 8th. The first thing we discussed was we did an analysis of the community outreach registrar position that has been budgeted for. Dr. Antunes reviewed the salary of when we had the community outreach coordinator previously, and also where other districts have a registrar, what their salaries were, and what the responsibilities of this position would entail. We discussed when we will be meeting in May and June. Also, we talked about the update of the Board of Ed portion of the district website, and that the chain of communication is ready to go. Hopefully, all that information will be updated as soon as possible. And there was a preliminary discussion on the climate survey where the district is looking at what the cost of that would be, going to an outside vendor. And the committee members wanted to make sure we included ways to survey the entire community. We discussed the Rutgers Labor Management Collaborative, especially past efforts. Our district joined the collaborative about 4 years ago. And there were 2 days of training in December of 2018. And recently, board members and also some administrators attended an inter-district conference. And there were some breakout sessions as part of that conference. We discussed that when comments are made at the board meeting, and if there's not an immediate response, Dr. Antunes shared that we often include information in school messengers based on comments that were made at the board meetings. Dr. Antunes also shared that she's planning 2 or 3 outdoor events to showcase some of our completed projects, such as the high school track, the new signage at Aris, and the new paving and loop at Sunnymead. And we discussed the possibility of having a town hall meeting type of setting. And we discussed the possible dates for the board retreat. Okay, that's it as far as a communication committee meeting. There was also a meeting for the Sumsit County Educational Services Commission on April 7th. The highlight of that was when the Superintendent Hal Dunsavage spoke about a partnership with the Sumsit County Vocational and Technical School, and they're researching the possibility of serving special ed vocational students by beginning in the Career Center at the ESC with the intention of advancing them to a program at the County VOTech. And finally, there was a Municipal Alliance meeting on April 9th. Looking forward, there's expected to be a DIRT virtual assembly on May 12th presented to freshmen. And exciting component of that, there will be DIRT graphic novels given to every freshman. And I think we're going to be voting on it. Donation. This would be a donation by the HEA. So we appreciate that, the generosity of the HEA to make that happen. And there's going to be a Hope for Tomorrow mental health fair. It will be held on Friday, May 14th from 5 to 7 at the Municipal Complex. And looking to the past, there was an angst documentary that addressed anxiety issues that was screened on April 22nd, followed by a discussion. And this past Friday and Saturday, we had the We're All in This Together talent show that was live streamed, and there was quite a variety of talents from all ages. And we appreciate everyone's contributions to that. And I want to give a special shout out, special thanks to Mr. Bob Fenster for all of his behind the scenes work for that. This was a fundraiser for the Municipal Alliance as well as Borough Safe. And he's not a member of either, but he did a lot of work to make this happen. So we appreciate his efforts. That's it, Mr. Hill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stats. Mr. Gillette, if you would give the operations report. Thank you.
Operations Committee met on April 13th, 2021. We had a number of items on the agenda. I'll tell you about some of them, probably all of them. We looked over some regulations and policies that we no longer need or that had minor language changes. So there are about 5 that had minor language changes to make them fit in with state law, state regulation. So we agreed that they should be amended. And one policy 7430, school safety, is no longer needed because it's encompassed within other policies. Those were all recommendations from our policy advisor, Strauss Esme. We had an update on the Honeywell, potential litigation with Honeywell over the ESIP project. Our attorney that's looking into that is going to hire an expert, which is going to be a good use of our money for this, and hopes to recoup much money in a settlement agreement. Hopefully. I think I just gave away our strategy there. Oh well. Like as if they didn't know that we're trying to recoup some money in a settlement agreement. We had Mrs. Schwab come in, she's the purchasing assistant. Is that right? Is that the title? I mean, yeah, I should know that. She's purchasing assistant come in to talk about the RFQs for our professional appointments, which we'll make at the end of next month. As you know, we appoint all of the professionals every year, but we typically look deeper into our professionals every 3 years on a rotating basis. So this year we took a deeper dive into the auditor, and we had to anyway because the auditor is retiring, so we need to change auditors, the environmental consultant, as well as the architect. So we're going to have a recommendation on that. We'll talk more about it at the next meeting, and then at the second meeting in May, we'll appoint them. Let's see. We talked about some of the what I like to call the groups that have a special relationship with the district. These would be like the booster clubs, other outside groups like Project Graduation, even including maybe HSAs, things like that. And what our relationship as a district should be with those groups, how they should if the board should recognize which groups are the official booster clubs or official HSAs every year, things like that. As I may have talked about this at a previous meeting, but many boards of education have a policy governing this. We've looked at that policy, and we're going to look to maybe make some recommendations to the board for our own policy along those lines. Page 3. We talked about the upcoming high school prom. And Mr. Mahmood indicated that he had the contract on his desk. I think by now it's probably signed as I'm speaking now, but back on April 13th, it wasn't yet signed. So we wanted to know what the status of that was, because we want the kids to have the prom if it could be done. So we took a look at that. We had an update on the cyber attack, nothing more than you've probably heard today. There's not much can be said when I've got the authorities looking into it. We had an update on the budget, and I'm purposely left off the HES playground because you don't want to know about it. You just don't want to know. Nobody wants to know about it. So when there's something positive, I'm not going to report any more on the HES playground until there's something positive to report, because there's nothing positive. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillette. Ms. Maroon with the Education Committee report. Thank you.
Sure. The Education Committee met on April 14th. There was, again, a number of items listed. We started with book adoptions that, again, are listed on tonight's agenda, so you can take a look at those. And as Greg said in his operations report, we took a look at revisions to policies in regards to the education. Again, they're listed on the agenda, and the policies to be abolished, which same thing, the language just didn't, it wasn't needed. So again, it's all listed on tonight's agenda. We also spent some time going over the school performance report, which again was shared out tonight, so I don't really need to talk about that too much. We touched on the summer credit, and at that time registration was ongoing. And again, the cyber attack kind of halted that, so I guess more on that will be coming to be announced, I'm assuming. We touched on the summer reading selection process, and then there were also a couple more items that were still ongoing, and we're going to continue to go over, and when that is ready, it will be shared as soon as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Maroon. Then I'd like to now invite Mr. Marini. Thank you for being the liaison to the township's Sustainable Hillsborough Committee.
All right, thank you very much. The meeting was held on the 22nd last week. A couple of items were covered that were potentially of interest to those on the call. The first was the reference to Sustainable Jersey, which is a program that both the township and the schools are actually enrolled in. The township had their best year with sustainability, becoming a silver certified town. On the school side, interestingly enough, I'm not sure many are aware of this, but we are actually registered for Sustainable Jersey schools. Both the district and 6 of our schools are registered, but up to this point, I think there's been 0 participation from the schools, probably mostly because nobody's aware that we're even registered for that. So what this does is basically takes different things that you're doing around sustainability and gives you points for them. It allows you to register your school as a sustainable school and or a sustainable district. This may be of interest because there may be folks in high school who want something on their college resumes around sustainability. They may find this of interest, or potentially some of the HSAs throughout Hillsborough want to get involved in this. It's likely that we could get recognition for things that we're already doing, not even necessarily adding additional tasks onto folks, but potentially be recognized. If people want more information on this, the website is sustainablejersey.com and sustainablejerseyschools.com, and you can kind of see what's included and what you gather points for. The other thing here, just around Hillsborough, there's a website, mywaterpledge.com, which talks about sustainability with water usage. Hillsborough is actually rated #1 for our size in New Jersey and the 35th ranked city in the country. And if folks go in and register and fill out the form at mywaterpledge.com, and we finish high enough, I think there's some awards that go out to some of the Jersey sustainable efforts available. There's some other things about, park restoration and other items, but those were the main items I wanted to speak about today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marini. So now I'd like to open it up to the board if there are any questions on committee reports. Ms. Nurse, please.
Can someone please clarify under 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, just a quick synopsis of the ESEA, and if the figures there are what we have not spent or what that is?
I think.
Okay. So basically, just correct me if I'm wrong. So,
I'm sorry, I can't hear, Lisa.
okay, is that better? Okay. So essentially, the state, yes, it's money that wasn't spent that we then carry over to the next year. But what happened was last year, because of COVID, they don't typically open up more than 1 year, but because of COVID, so many districts didn't spend that money that they opened up carryover for a second year on some of the on ESEA. And so as a result of that, we had to do an amendment and resubmit. It's just not Hillsborough, it was all districts. And so I tried to explain that in my message to the board and the communicator. Perhaps I didn't do that clearly enough. I don't know if I'm missing anything, Ms. Sangiuliano.
I can just add that every year we typically have carryover from the prior year, and it's typically around this time in which we do an amendment to our application in order to carry over the funds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sangiuliano, for that clarification. Dr. Antunes also. Are there any other questions from the board on committee reports? Okay, seeing none, then I'd like to move on to the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion for the approval of 8.1, the executive session minutes? Mr. Pulsifer, was that Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Oh, Mr. Marini, thank you. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much.
Motion passes.
Now may I have a motion for 8.2, motion to approve the public minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Marin.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Marini. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. So now I'd like to open it up to the public for public comments. And so I will read the blurb that we always do. So we very much welcome public input from, start again. And we very much welcome input from the public. During board meetings, there will be two. Can you hear me now? Okay. We very much welcome input from the public. During board meetings, there will be two 30-minute periods of time that the meeting will be opened for public comment, where members of the public are invited to comment, which they may do so via Zoom, in person if they are attending in person, or via written comments sent via letter or email to that email address. During the first public comment period, members of the public may comment about items that are listed on tonight's agenda before the board votes. If time remains in this public comment period, members of the public may comment on any school or school district issue that a member of the public feels may be of concern to the residents of the school district as per bylaw 167. Before you state your question or comment, you'll be asked to provide your name and address. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but rather are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board believes there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent will address the comment. There may be times when a member of the public makes a comment or asks a question about personnel or hiring decisions. Kindly note that the Open Public Meetings Act and the privacy rights of public employees encompassed therein do not permit the board to discuss personnel issues in public session. Before I open it up to the public that is in the room, Mr. Mahmood, were there any public comments via letter or email?
We're going to take a quick look, Mr. Hale, just to double check. Nothing much. We had prior, so nothing for this one. We have nothing recorded for this meeting, Mr. Hale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahmood. So then now I will turn it over to members in the room. So Ms. Salinger, I will promote you to panelist.
No.
No. Oh, she's saying no. Okay. So sorry.
Lower your hand.
Okay, so.
Her hand was up so long, I thought that was like, she was like dying to say something.
All
It's
right.
been up for half an hour.
Any other comments from members of the public in the room with us? Okay, so I see nobody in the room who wants to speak. In the Zoom room, I see Karen Chu that I will now elevate to panelist. Ms. Chu, oh, there you are. Welcome whenever you're ready.
You're on mute, Miss Chu.
Now can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm concerned that you may not be offering the advanced classes for the sixth graders, and I wanted to know if that's going to affect our students compared to the rest of the nation.
Is that the extent of your public comment?
That was pretty much it. I had a lot of questions, but then you said not to ask questions, but I'm just concerned about it because I want to make sure that the kids are still up to par where they're supposed to be and that they have every opportunity that they should be getting.
Thank you. Is there anything further that you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Chu, for your public comment. Oh, are there any other comments from, let me see, the Mr. Gordon? Mr. Gordon, whenever you're ready.
Hi. Good evening. I'd like to share my concerns as well on the plan that's been discussed regarding the move to remove the advanced classes from the sixth grade in the name of equity. I know there is a meeting this week with the fifth grade parents, but really this issue affects all of Hillsborough families, all the students who will one day be sixth graders, so it really should be a discussion for all of us. Personally, I do think equity is a huge area of concern for all of us in education, and I'm glad to see the district is addressing it, but I think that this particular change would be misguided. I'm going to refer to a brief on educational equity by the Center for Public Education. It states that equality in education is achieved when students are all treated the same and have access to similar resources. Equity is achieved when all students receive the resources they need so that they graduate prepared for success after high school. The advanced classes offer a chance for students who are working at above grade level to remain challenged and engaged and to learn how to learn. As the parent of a child who was rarely challenged by the content in elementary school and who never learned how to study or work hard, the sixth grade advanced classes were the first time he began to learn how to study, a skill that really is essential as a student moves into higher grades. Sixth grade was also the first time we didn't have to ask the teachers to try to find enrichment material to keep our child engaged. I know we're not alone in this, because I've heard similar stories from other parents. There is a common misconception that we don't need to worry about the more advanced students and they'll be fine. But the truth is many of these students struggle with boredom and disengagement, which can lead to poor performance and lack of motivation to succeed in school. These students need our support, just like our struggling learners. If we care about equity, we need to give these students the resources they need to succeed. I certainly understand the desire for equity and the urge to make sure that capable students are not being left behind. However, this really is not a reason to eliminate the advanced classes. In the case of language arts, the advanced class runs parallel with the pro classes. I personally know of students who move from pro to advanced between 6th and 7th and the other way. A student had a rough year and was not selected for advanced 6th grade literacy had the chance to be selected the following year. Even at the high school level, I know of students who were in pro and HMS and they went to honors at the high school. In terms of math, I think if we're concerned that capable students are not being selected for advanced math in 6th grade and are missing the chance for the more advanced classes later on, maybe we should reconsider the way the students are chosen. Perhaps teacher recommendation should be a higher part than a test grade. Or perhaps we should offer students the benefit of the doubt and let them be reconsidered toward the end of the year, like they do it from 8th to 9th grade. Maybe the philosophy should be the student who really is motivated to try the advanced class should be given the chance, and then with the knowledge that if it turns out to be a bad fit, they can shift back to the pro in 7th grade. I can think of many ways we can make the placement process more equitable without getting rid of the class and denying all students the chance for the higher level learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon, for your public comments. All right, I see Mr. Albanese in the Zoom room. I will now promote you to panelist.
Can you hear me?
Yes, your video is off though.
Yes,
yes, we can see and we can hear you, Mr. Albanese. Thank you.
Very good. Good evening. I just have some points of contention I'd like to speak about. I'm still tremendously disappointed in this administration. will continue fighting daily, not for just my children, but for the children and parents in this community. We need to stop the non-transparent communication and move forward, opening our district fully. We also need to stop muzzling our children. The recovery rate for COVID for children under 18 is 99.97%. The overall rate is 99.7x%, right from the CDC website. Last meeting, I addressed the fact that other school districts in Somerset County were open 5 days a week, full days, and we are still on a 4-day, half-day schedule. The children are not learning, and it is your fault, Ms. Antunes. You continue to take direction and not give it. True leaders lead from the front, and you're way behind. I asked for a meeting with Mr. Carey concerning the issue with my child. He agreed to the meeting, then he retracted his agreement to meet with me. I'm appalled at this decision, and I know exactly where it came from. I did speak to the teacher, and Mr. Carey said he would bring the department head to the meeting to discuss the issue again. I was blindsided and censored. I also addressed the issue of the student in the hybrid program that are not allowed to go virtual if they're sick, or something happens like missing the bus. They have lost enough learning. This is a double standard. You use this to take away snow days from the children over the winter. This needs to change now. Our children should not be punished for being sick or missing the bus. Most households have 2 working parents, not 1, and most are essential personnel. I would also like to address the 8 minutes my child has to eat snack at Harris. These kids aren't getting lunch, and they're there until after 2 p.m. and cannot eat for more than 8 minutes. I bet all of you get 8 minutes to eat, and you get a full lunch. Also, my son has to get up from his chair, go to the corner, take down his muzzle and drink, place his muzzle back on and go sit. This is absolutely ridiculous. Ms. Antunes, last week you touched on the attack in the Asian American community. If you do some research and take the time to stop dividing the community, you would understand why this happened. The man who shot the Asian Americans in Georgia had an addiction, and he did not get what he wanted. He did not target them. They were just the owners of that establishment. Mr. Eo, you responded to an email I wrote and gave me several outside sources to help my children. The intent was to get you to open schools, not push the issue off on someone else. You are the president of the board, and you need to start acting like it. Take responsibility and be a leader. I will say this again. Our children are the stakeholders, and the taxpayers are the pillars of the community. Please fix this district now. There should be a plan to have our stakeholders back in school full time before the end of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Albanese. Are there any other comments from the public in the Zoom room? Okay, seeing none, that I will now close public comments. And before I move on, I'd actually like to just make a few comments. Oh, Mr. Pulsifer, please go ahead.
I would just ask if we can clarify something, because something Ms. Chu mentioned about not asking questions. I think it's important for the public to understand that when we have the public comment session, you are certainly free to ask all the questions you want, and you should ask the questions you want. The point is that we will not answer those questions in session. We don't have time to have a full Q&A, but certainly if you have questions, this is one of the right times to come and ask the question. So hearing Ms. Chu say that something about being told not to ask questions, I want the public to understand. You absolutely can ask questions. The point of that introduction is that this is not a Q&A session where we will have long discussions to answer all of those questions. The answers will come later, whether it's through other communication forms. But people should not feel that they cannot come to a board meeting and ask questions.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. Pulsifer. That was helpful. Were there any other comments from the board? Mr. Gillette, no? Okay. Are there any other comments from the board? I'm seeing none. Then I actually want to just make I guess we will. I'm assuming, Dr. Antunes, I know Mr. Carey has a meeting to share with parents the idea of what will be happening with detracking at ARIS. So shall we leave it till perhaps the next board meeting to elaborate further for the public? Okay. Then I'd like to just make a few comments in response. Well, I don't even know in response. It's just, I guess, in response in general to the situation that we all find ourselves in, right? COVID, coronavirus, it's raging on for over a year now. And as I'd heard from school boards, just the various different mental health seminars that I've attended, that this is a worldwide trauma. This is not just Hillsborough. This is not just New Jersey or the United States. It's a worldwide event. And I think that our administration and our board are all on the same page. We are moving forward to try and reopen schools as quickly and as safely as we can. Children are absolutely our stakeholders, but so are our staff. And we need to make sure that everybody feels safe and comfortable moving forward. And I do believe that Dr. Antunes's plan, the phase-in, phase-up plan, is an excellent plan. It was praised by Dr. Mandelbaum at one of our recent board meetings. And I think that comparisons with other districts are not helpful because we are not the same as other districts. We are a district of 9 schools, 7,400 students, a K through 12 district, and we are all doing our very best. So I wanted to remind the public of that. We think of this every single day, the board, administrators, staff. So I wanted to just make that comment before we move on. And I've opened it up to the public, to the board if they had any other comments. Okay, Mr. Marini, please.
Yes, thank you. This is a question I think for Dr. Antunes. I know there's, as you can tell today, a bunch of comments on the detracking for 6th grade and potential removal of the advanced classes. And obviously the board is not setting individual curriculums throughout the school, but what input does the board have as it relates to that decision?
Dr. Feltry presented this to the Education Committee. We did receive information from the Education Committee that Dr. Feltry then incorporated into her discussions with the supervisory team, the administration at Alton Road, and hopefully that trickled down to the teachers, and that's sort of where we're going with that. And it's all based upon best practices, research, and education. So that's sort of where we are at this point. So the board is informed. It's not really a board decision, but the board is certainly informed of this decision.
Okay.
Whatever the decision is.
Ms. Nurse, please.
I have 2 things. One, to just comment on what Mrs. Trujillo said about our situation. And even I hear we continually say reopening, which I guess seems to me at this point like an obsolete word because we are reopened. We have been reopened for a long time. And just, I don't like the comparison either. I think we're doing a good job to balance getting our children in and keeping everybody safe. But there are districts that aren't open yet, are still completely virtual. So I think I don't know, maybe we just need to look to transform our plan to call it something other than reopening, because we are reopened and doing the best we can with that. I was going to save my other comment for the second session, but since it keeps coming up, I too have some feelings about the detracking. Not so much, I don't have opinion yet on that because we were not informed at all about it, which is my biggest concern. We were at a meeting last month and it was introduced by the Education Committee. And we were told it was in the very beginning stages. I believe that meeting was March 22nd. And then we had an email from a teacher that attached a district email, maybe not a district, maybe only at ARIS, about professional development to prepare teachers, which was sent on April 8th. So I'm not sure what happened in between March 22nd and April 8th to already have a decision made that that's definitely what the district is doing. So as I listened to the public comments about their feelings, I feel that it was an unjust path because you've already made a decision. And the public really didn't have any time to comment on their feelings before that was a final decision. At least that's my understanding from the way I read the email. I am a teacher and I've been a teacher for 23 years. So my using my inferencing skills. When you're talking about professional development, that means you've already made a decision and now you're on a path to educate the teachers. I have stood on the platform of open communication. I will continue to stand on that platform. And, you know, working in another district, it was my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong about what I see happening in my district, but I thought anything new curricular-wise or a change or getting rid of a curriculum area was a board presentation. So that the board could hear it and be knowledgeable, and so the public could, and be able to have input or at least be able to express their feelings. So I'm not sure what went awry, in moving forward with this, but I would really like to have that answered in terms of the process. So, because we keep getting ourselves caught in these circles of feeling that there's a lack of communication.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nurse. Mr. Kidd, did you have your hands up before?
I had my hand up before, right after Ms. Nurse.
Okay, would you like to comment?
Yes, it's actually also about the detracking. My concern, especially, obviously I agree with a lot of the commentary made by the public and other board members regarding this issue, but also my main concern is this happening, especially going into a year which we may or may not have full in-person, and like the issues that I have with that is you're going to have students who, despite all the efforts that both they, their parents, and everyone in the administration and all staff have put in, there are going to have these students who are below what their level would have been if they had a normal in-person year. And my concern is this plan going to hinder their ability to fully move up towards advanced classes later in the future? If the answer is no, then I'm happy. Then I think the decision is an all right one. But I think that's an important question that needs to be asked. And like one of the members of the public commented, maybe we should examine the method for which students are selected for the advanced classes rather than removing the advanced classes altogether, if that's an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Kidd. Ms. Stats?
Just to reiterate what I said at the last board meeting, I, again, have concerns about the process regarding the detracking, the lack of collaboration with parents and especially staff. The board knew about it before staff, especially the affected staff, knew about it. And I do appreciate the desire to address equity. I'm not sure that this is the solution to that, or that it would actually be any kind of solution. I also want to, okay, on another topic, I would say most of our students are learning. And whatever difficulties our students are having, it is horrible, but I think it's human nature. You want to blame a person, but it's the virus that is to blame. Everyone is working as hard as possible, especially our students, but also staff, administration, to provide the best possible education. But most of our students are learning. And as far as hate that is targeting Asian Americans, whatever the impetus was for the killings in Atlanta, that was one incident. The statistics show that there has been a significant increase in hate crimes targeting Asian Americans. So that's definitely an issue that I'm glad that we have addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Mr. Gillette, and then Ms. Nurse.
Thank you. So on the detracking, there's I see there's two issues. One is the process, and if when you're on the board a long time, you find out that everything's in the early stages until it's done. It's always in the early stages. That's just how it goes. There's we're just looking into this curriculum. We're just putting a little money into writing it. We haven't approved it as a class. Oh, it's a class. Before you know it, it's a class now. You find that a lot, and I think Ms. Maroon reported it correctly. She reported it as she knew it to be. I think when administration describes that there'll be collaboration, that's in collaboration in staff. This is how you're going to get it done. We'll let you collaborate in how you're going to get it done, but not in the decision of whether this is a good idea. Also for parents and more broadly residents. It's a shame that they should have to write emails about this because they've got 9 people representing them here, but we didn't. So look, when Mrs. Maroon reported on it, was I the only one thinking that discussion was sort of tamped down because it was in the early stages? So board discussion was sort of, it would tamp it down because it's early stages. And then, yes, I think Miss Nurse was correct. We saw an email from a staff member, and that's how we learned that decision had been made. But so that's one thing. That process, either you're going to get used to it or you're going to fight it like hell for next 2 years, 2.5, 3 years, or even more probably. And you do that. The other issue is the tracking itself, whether it's a good idea. Who knows? I had a brief discussion with Dr. Antunes about it a few days ago, and she said what she said tonight, that it's best practices. I don't think she mentioned equity in her explanation to me about it once. She just said it's best educational practices, as I said the other day, I have to defer the educational stuff to her. I think it might be a solution to some problem that we have with students being shut out of future advanced classes because they were not in the right class in 6th grade. I get that. I think, like many others have said, there might be other solutions to that, including taking a class in the summer or something, taking that math that you might need in the summer, or doing something else. I don't know if the detracking is the best thing, but I think the detracking is just if you look at it in the lens of equity, I think it's the first thing of a lot of things that are going to happen. And I just hope that these things that happen don't degrade the high standard of the district. If we get rid of all grades and say, well, we're just going to give take students and just assess them on if they've achieved a standard or know some kind of other standard, not grades. Is the standard going to be getting the right answer? I hope so. But we've already heard what getting the right answer means. Getting the right answer is white privilege. We've already been told that. So that's what we've been told. That getting the right answer in math and other things is white privilege. So look, both of my kids are in the colleges that they wanted to be in. They were accepted to all the colleges that they wanted to be in that they applied for. And I think one of the reasons is because the college admissions people know that Hillsborough School District is a good competitive school district with high standards. And I think whatever we do in all these areas, we need to maintain that. So I'm just going to ask the board administration to please, whatever you do in this area, please keep the standards of the district high. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillette. Ms. Nurse?
Yes. Back to the process, and somebody had said that the board knew about this before the teachers, and I'm not even sure that's the case. The first time I heard about this again was at the March 22nd board meeting. However, now, because I can't even say why we're doing this because there was never a presentation on why we were doing, whether it is best practices or whether it is about equity. But in any case, removing an advanced class from one grade when all of the other grades after it have advanced classes doesn't make sense to either best practices or to equity, because once we move into the middle school, we have the same advanced classes and honors classes as we go into the high school. So again, it seems that we're lacking communication. I did try in preparation, reached out to the appropriate people when I first thought it was a done deal. I did hear back briefly from Dr. Antunes, and Lisa was great. We had a conversation and she had the information that she could pass on, which wasn't much. The administration that was in charge of this, I never heard back from. So I'm not sure if my emails could have gotten lost in the cyber attack. That could be a possibility. I'm hoping that's the case. And here we are again, and now we've had all this parent input. We've heard how people on the board don't think it might be a great idea. We don't have all the information. I've been in the teaching field for 22 years. I know that best practice can be finagled to mean pretty much anything that you want it to mean. Just as much research as there are for advanced classes or against advanced classes, there probably are for for. So I'm not sure where we are. I'm not sure if this truly is a done deal. I would love to know the answer to that. And if it is a done deal, I would like to know, and the public probably, sounds like the public would like to know why the decision was made for one grade only and not for all of the other grades that have advanced classes. This is our job. And Mr. Gillette said that I might have to fight this every year and this process, and I will. I don't understand how we're making curriculum decisions and the supervisors of that curriculum are not coming and presenting what is going on in the district. I just don't understand that, and I think it needs to be fixed immediately. Where we start to do that, I don't know, because I'm new to this, but I'm hoping that I get the guidance, or we get the guidance to move us forward. So we, like I said, we can be communicative and collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse. Ms. Maroon, please.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Being all the way over here on the end, I'm like, wah! I want to, I guess, just kind of, explain how this process even came about. So I'm going to probably be the bad guy here and say that, yes, there's a chain of command that needs to be followed. And I do believe that the chain of command was rightfully followed. Our job as the board, it's not to make curriculum. It's not to make the decisions. It's to support the decisions that the administrators and the teachers, hopefully collaboratively, are doing. And if that's what they're seeing in the schools and that's what they're thinking is the best practice, then we are to support them. So by saying that it is our job, but it is our job to take a look at it, but it's not our job to make the decision to say yes or no, depending on what the administrators want. The administrators want to administrate. The supervisors need to supervise. The teachers need to teach. And we're here to support what they want as well, and what's best for the students as a whole. So I'm not going to touch into whether or not, I'm not going to get into the whole detracking issue. There's research out there. It is best practice. There are many districts that have already done it. There are many districts in New Jersey that are already doing it, and they're very successful. However, the chain of command is being that it was brought to the board level. We heard it. Okay. Now it's going into the teachers, and the teachers are being collaborative. They're meeting together, and hopefully there will be the information given. And as you said, the email went out to the email from Mr. Carey. So more information will be coming, I'm sure, for the parents before anything is implemented. So I just want to make sure that, this is the correct role that it is taken. Greg kind of, when he was first starting to go, I kind of agreed with you. So thank you that, the board knew. And that's pretty much all I have right now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Maroon. And also just to clarify for the public too, that Mr. Carey will be doing a parent presentation, I believe this Thursday. It will be live streamed. No question. I think questions are being taken in advance. And I believe there will be a recording for those who could not attend it live. And now to Ms. Stats.
Could we get a definitive whether this is definitely happening next year or not, if that decision has been made?
The decision has not been made.
But they're planning PD for it. Is that correct?
Dr. Felcher, is that correct? Yes. But the PD goes across, it focuses on many things, not just this. Is that an accurate statement, Dr. Felcher, or not?
The professional development is on differentiation.
Okay.
Ms. Stats.
Okay, I guess I still have concerns about how we define collaboration and when it occurs. And I think that causes some consternation on the part of a lot of people. But I would also like to address what Mr. Gillette mentioned as far as white privilege. White privilege just means that there are advantages that whites have that people of color often do not. Not because of any action whites necessarily have, just by the nature of long history of our society. For instance, my father was able to purchase a house in an area where it was denied to blacks. And we were able to get a very good education because of that. You know, geography makes a difference as far as, especially back then, the quality of the schools. That's just one example. Another example, he was able to get a college education because of GI Bill, which was denied to many people of color, if not all people of color. So that's just a small hint of an example of white privilege that I personally have been privileged to, and it continues to be an issue.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Are there any other comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, then I will turn it over to Dr. Antunes for the action agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the education agenda as follows: 10.1 to 10.8, motion to approve professional travel related expenses. Motion to affirm the superintendent's HIB determination. Motion to approve submission of amendment FY 2019 carryover for ESEA and to accept the 2019 carryover for ESEA. Motion to accept the 2020 carryover for ESEA and to approve fiction and nonfiction books as listed. Motion to approve policies and regulations for first reading, as well as to abolish the policies listed.
Thank you, Dr. Antunes. May I have a motion and a second? Mr. Kidd, is that a motion?
So moved.
That's Ms. Maroon, thank you.
Actually, I had a quick question before we put it into a motion. I was looking
Actually, Mr. Kidd, if we could just put it into motion and then we can discuss.
All right, seconded then.
A second, thank you very much, Mr. Kidd, and then open for discussion, Mr. Kidd.
I was looking at the policy for 10.8 and regarding the academic standards and the policies discussed there. Are those abolishments going to be permanent, or is that only going to be temporary due to situations regarding the regarding COVID-19?
No, those policies are abolished because those policies have to do with NCLB, not ESEA. That's the reason they're abolished.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Any other comments on this portion? Seeing none, Mr. Mahmood, may we have a roll call, please?
Surely. Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mr. Kidd?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Marini?
Yes.
Mrs. Maroon?
Yes.
Mrs. Nurse?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Stats?
Yes.
And Ms. Trujillo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the human resources agenda as follows: 11.1 to 11.14. Motion to approve retirements and resignations. I would like to point out that there are a number of retirements And many of them, they range from 17 years to 36 years of service to the students of Hillsborough. So right from Kathy Bosco, who's a curriculum secretary, to 30 years, one of our ESL teachers, Jan, who known as Coran, 18 years, Leslie Husing, 21 years, Deborah Kaufman, 28 years, Deborah Meredith, 21 years, Linda Migliori, 36 years, Amy Ossie, 36 years, Emery Pahulis, 20 years, Paula Frenda, 25 years, Janet Tracy, 19 years, and Robert Weber, 17 years. Thank you for all of your hard work and dedication. Motion to approve contract changes, motion to approve revised appointments and a revised mentor, motion to approve revised leaves of absence and to approve a revised leave replacement teacher, motion to approve leaves of absence, as well as appointments for 2020, 2021, motion to approve appointments for 21-22, to approve student teacher, motion to pre-approve extra coverage and to approve extra coverage, as well as a motion to approve the summer enrichment program, 6th and 7th, as well as 6th and 7th period coverages.
Thank you, Dr. Antunes. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Ross. Thank you, Mr. Kidd. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Pulsifer.
I think you neglected to mention one that's hitting hard here, and I wish I could vote no on the resignation of our assistant BA because I really wish we could keep her here, but I will vote yes and extend my best wishes.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Did we take a motion? We did the motion.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Motion and yes.
Mr. Mahmood, could we have a roll call, please? Thank you.
Really, I will echo the words of Mr. Pulsifer. Mr. Gillette.
Yes.
Mr. Kidd.
Yes.
Mr. Marini.
Yes.
Mr. Maroon. Mrs. Maroon, sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Nurse.
Yes.
Mr. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer.
Yes.
Ms. Stats.
Yes.
And Ms. Trujillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the operations agenda as follows: 12.1 to 12.7, which include motion to approve the monthly financials and the monthly bills, motion to approve the 2021-2022 non-public nursing agreement with SC at ESC, motion to approve the 21-22 joint transportation agreement with Somerset County Educational Services Commission, motion to accept the donations as listed, including the one that somebody pointed out from the HEA for 600 copies of dirt and a great camera with some lenses, a motion to approve policies and regulations for the first reading, as well as to abolish the policy and regulation as listed.
Thank you, Dr. Antunes. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gillette.
Second.
Was that Mr. Marini?
It was.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? No, then I would just like to also echo Dr. Antunes' thanks to Ms. McNall for the camera and to the Hillsborough Education Association for the 600 copies of dirt for the freshman class. Thank you both very much. If we could have a roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Surely. Mr. Gillette.
Yes.
Mr. Kidd.
Yes.
Mr. Marini.
Yes.
Mrs. Maroon.
Yes.
Mrs. Nurse.
Yes.
Mr. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer.
Yes.
Mrs. Stats.
Yes.
And Ms. Trujillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So now I will turn it over to comments from the board prior to opening it up to the public. Mr. Marini.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to bring up a point and potentially a motion. Obviously we're going over the budget, and one of the larger spends that we have that's, I guess, discretionary of the board is our external legal counsel. And this is not a comment on Mr. Lapira's effectiveness, but I wanted to open up the idea of doing an annual review for our legal counsel. Obviously, if we could save the district $10,000, $20,000 a year, even if it's something that relatively small to the budget, that's something that would be extremely beneficial to the board. And even if it is that his firm is the one selected again, at least we know we're getting the best deal for the district. So my suggestion, if I have the ability to have somebody back me up on this, to have a vote or a motion to effectively do this annually.
I would actually ask Mr. Gillette if you would like to make any comments as the operations chair.
Well, I guess the comment I'll make right off the top is that we do appoint all professionals annually, so we always have the opportunity to do that. I would say that before several years ago, when Mr. Mahmood and I had this idea to do the professionals on a rotating basis, we never looked at RFQs for professional reappointments, I should say, unless there was a specific issue. We just rolled them over every single year. And we said, let's stop doing that. So we did take one step, and that we look at like a third of the professionals every year. But we have changed in the past professionals with, sooner. Certainly if there's an issue, we look at it. And so that's one piece of it. The second piece is that I think on cost savings, it's difficult for any of the professionals, because they're going to bill hourly, and I look, they're all going to be ethical, but seriously, I looked at those bills the other day, and look, there's all kinds of bills. You don't know you're not going to, as a board, you're not going to know. They kind of, it's going to be hard to predict savings you're going to get. Maybe if you did come with someone where a partner was $25 an hour less, then maybe you could see something. I don't know. Sometimes when you've got a partner's at $25, but they're going to charge you for stapling, collating copies of something. That's been done before. Law firms do that. Not the great ones, like Folk and Harrow or whatever, but maybe but you know what I mean? They somehow make it up, and that's a danger. So I'm open to it, of course. I'm open to discussing it, but I just think it's not as easy as you might think. So there's some other places where we can change things, and it's very clear cut that we're definitely going to have savings. I think the professionals, it's difficult. So that's my input on it. I'm just one person.
Mr. Marini, what would you like to do?
Yeah, so I hear Mr. Gillette's points, but I think it does not hurt to put this out for proposal regardless. So if we choose to say there's not enough value in switching, I think that's an okay decision to make once we've collected the information. But to say, oh, they might charge us for collating is not a reason to not do an RFP for the services. So I think it's in our best interest to actually take that step and do a review annually in case we do have the $25 an hour cost reduction.
So I see Mr. Oliver's hand up. I would also propose to Mr. Marini perhaps to refer this proposal to the operations committee. And you're shaking your head no. I'm gonna maybe let you think about that and ask Mr. Oliver for his opinion, his comments.
So, moving forward, I think we're going to be faced with some severe budget cuts or some constraints on money in the coming year. The projected revenue loss or aid loss that we're going to get. I think this is something we should bid out on an annual basis, not just for legal, but any large vendor that we're contracting with. I think it keeps them honest. It may not mean that we're going to have any savings, but I think it's our responsibility to see if there's anything that's there that we could review. It's just a matter of sending out a request to any interested bidders. I'm sure Iman is more than happy to take on some additional tasks, especially since he's lost his right arm. But I don't see anything wrong with it, so I would support Mr. Marini's suggestion.
Ms. Nurse, did you have a mustache?
Well, like Mr. Gillette says, there's a process where we do every 3 years a certain group of professionals. This logic could also be applied to every single one of them. We seem to be targeting this one because the there's more of a presence that we're aware of. So I just worry about the amount of effort it would take to do this if we were to be consistent. But that also brings me to my next point is I do have a concern, and again, it's no, this is not meant to be any kind of criticism of our legal representation, but the fact that we have the attorney present at every board meeting, that's an expense. It also creates a concern as far as optics. Why that would be necessary. That we are anticipating something that an attorney would be necessary for. Our board secretary, Mr. Mahmood, often is able to address things that sometimes we defer to Mr. Lapira for that aren't even legal issues. So I think that's what we should be reconsidering.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Mr. Kidd, sorry, Ms. Nurse, did you have yours up earlier? Ms. Nurse, please, and then Mr. Kidd.
I did, and it was pretty much Jane said exactly what I was thinking, that if we're going to do it for one, we should be consistent and doing it for all of our vendors. And I'm hoping that this can be somewhat conversational, because I had asked about the lawyer's presence at all of our board meetings before, I think to Mr. Mahmood, and I think the answer was that was part of the contract and it was included in the base contract. So, I mean, if we're hearing questions, and I think Mr. Mahmood, if you could just jump in and help, so, everybody has that information, that would be very helpful in moving the conversation along. So I think Jane, he's here because that's part of the contract, the base contract. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, please.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Nurse, if I may, Ms. Trio?
Yes, please, Mr. Mahmood.
So we did go out to bid last year with for the attorneys, and there was a negotiation. The board had expressed some concerns about the expenses. We went back to Fogarty and Hera in the middle of a contract, and they revised their existing contract with us last year. And then moving forward for this year, they also revised the numbers, and they lowered the number of the dollars that they would be charging us for the coverage of a board meeting. So that was revised last year late during the contract. They amended it and we accepted it. And then this year, they also brought the number down in terms of expenses to a board meeting. And that was, we had a conversation and they came back and made some proposals that were decreasing expenses to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Mahmood. Did you have any follow-up question, Ms. Nurse? No? Okay. Mr. Kidd, and then Mr. Pulsifer, and then Mr. Gillette.
Mr. Pulsifer and Gillette can go first.
Okay. Mr. Pulsifer?
Oh, thank you. I cede my 5 minutes now. I think this is, it's something we need to be paying attention to for all of our professional services. But I think if we do this first of all, I don't think we should do our lawyers on an annual basis if we're not doing all the other professional services on an annual basis. I don't think that would be appropriate. There's nothing they've done or we think they have done that somehow means that the lawyers should be going every year and the others don't. So I would say if we're going to do that, that's the way we should do it. My concern is there is philosophical and actual financial costs to breaking the continuity. And so doing this so that we can save a certain amount of money when in fact, every time we change, we incur extra cost as a transition, because the current professional service provider is going to bill us for the handover, and the new professional service provider is going to bill us for the handover, all so that we can hand over potentially every year. So I think when we look at that, and if we just look at those numbers, we also have to look at the cost to the district in our own manpower to process all those RFPs every year, because we do spend time on that. That is money spent on processing that. So I'm certainly all for making sure that we hold the professional services hold their feet to the fire, and that they know that they're being watched. But I think the 3-year cycle is sufficient, and that I don't believe we stand to gain by doing it every year, because there are new costs that come in by doing it every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Mr. Gillette?
Yes, so I think Mr. Mahmood described it correctly. The contract calls for a reduced rate for a board meeting. It's not the partner hourly rate for to have Mr. Lapierre here at a board meeting. So it was reduced because it's a board meeting. So that was good. But I have to say, before 2018, we rarely had the attorney at the board meetings. That means the first 11 years I was on the board, I rarely saw the attorney, except in negotiations, and there was no problems with that. It began in January 2018. We had a different board president who wanted the attorney there at every meeting, and that's how it went for 3 years. I suggested this year if we went to a different type of meeting schedule where we only had maybe like one action meeting a week, we'd only need the attorney at the action meeting. That was sort of my way of presenting it like a compromise, where if you really felt we needed the attorney when we're voting on things, then you can still have it. But honestly, I think Ms. Stotts had it correct as far as parliamentary procedures and how the board operates. Mr. Mahmood can cover that. He is well versed in that from his many long years of experience in this district and other districts at Asbury Park and other outrageous places like that. So he knows what he's doing with that. And so if you wanted to get some savings, I mean, look, even though we have a reduced rate in the contract for appearances at a board meeting, it's still, a significant expense for us to have him here twice a month. So if Mr. Lapierre will be fine. He'll be fine if he didn't have to come here twice a month on a Monday night, especially during football season. So I mean, if we wanted to think about not having the attorney, but that's really up to the I think that's up to the board president. I believe. I think the board president gets to choose. I don't think we vote on whether we want the attorney here. The board president gets to choose who she wants, professionals and others, at the meetings. He or she, or whatever pronoun is.
That's good to know. Thank you, Mr. Gillette. So then perhaps I would I see a lot of people with their hands up. So then if that's truly the case, then perhaps I would talk to Dr. Antunes and Mr. Mahmood at our next meeting and perhaps develop a strategy or a proposal for the board to consider, or for a proposal that might, let me think about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Ms. Nurse and then Mr. Marini.
I'm hearing, I think, two different things. So I just want clarification, because I thought, Mr. Mahmood, you said that, like, okay, if we have a base contract of $20,000 and it covers X, Y, and Z, that we weren't paying hourly for somebody to be a legal person to be here. But then Mr. Gillette said the reduced rate of being here hourly. So can you just clarify which one it is, please?
It's a set rate, Mrs. Nurse. So it's not an hourly. It's a set rate that we pay for Fogarty and Harry to be here at a board meeting.
So let me see if I can ask this in a different way.
Is it per meeting?
There's a, is it, no?
It is not per meeting. It's.
Do you want me to clarify that?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lapierre.
Sure. So we had talked about, as you may recall, doing either a fixed rate either for the whole year. That was one of the questions that came up on the RFP, or on a per meeting basis. What we ended up doing after discussing it with you is we decided to kind of give you the best of both worlds there, where we said, we're going to give you hourly rate up to X hours. I think it's 3 hours or whatever it is. And then after that, everything after that is on my dime, not your dime. So that's my recollection, because I think the way that the original proposal was formulated was based upon a certain number of hours per meeting, an average number of hours per meeting. So yeah, for every meeting that I come to, it's billed hourly up to, I think, 3 hours. And then after that, that's it. So that's what I believe, if I recall correctly, that's the way we changed that rate, because originally there was a fixed rate. I think you asked all of the professionals the lawyers for a fixed rate per year. But then the question came up, well, what if we don't have you come to all the meetings? Then we're paying for something that we don't need. So that was the compromise that we reached.
Thank you very much, Mr. LaPira. So there is a lot of hands up, and I don't know who's first. So Mr. Marini is pointing to himself, so I'm going to go with him.
I've got the hand up for 6 comments, so thank you. So first off, this is not a comment on Mr. LaPira's performance or anything like that. Just so you understand, in my role, my professional life, I deal a lot with external legal, so I understand that the cost can build depending on the amount of work that you have. So my suggestion of reviewing the legal annually was based on my experience. I do agree that we should do this across the board. Now, I know there was a lot of comments about, well, it might cost more to transition. That's what an RFP is for. So you figure out the cost. If we could save enough money across professional services as a whole to add another teacher position or 2, wouldn't that be of benefit to the community? Our role is to be fiscally responsible to the community. So if your point is it might cost more and we find that out, then the decision is no, we don't make the change. But we should be putting this out to RFP so we understand the cost structure and make sure that we're doing the best job financially for the district. I don't understand what the pushback is if it could potentially save us money, even after figuring out the transition costs and everything else. There must be some other reason.
I see Mr. Pulsifer, but before Mr. Marini, if I could encourage again that we refer this topic to committee, in the sense that I don't know that we're going to get a decision tonight. And furthermore, we do need to, and I do think the committee is the best place to discuss this, in the sense that you make very many good points. We also have limited administrative time to review RFPs annually, and that's part of the reason that we do it on a 3-year basis. I think that we could have a more detailed discussion in committee. That I hear all of our board members' comments, and I personally have been on the record that, no offense, Mr. LaPira, I also did not believe that we needed a legal representation at the board meeting, but I deferred to advice. And so that's kind of where I stand, Mr. Marini, if you would be amenable to referring it to committee rather than putting it to a vote tonight, that I'm not sure that we would have the votes to move it forward. And I'm not really sure even what the question is. Is it just really a first motion to review it? I still think like you'd probably achieve your end goal after, like you could still bring it back at the next board meeting after the committee has met. And I believe that operations would be the correct committee to refer it to.
All right, so if it's possible for me to attend the next operations committee, so I'm not on that committee, to be part of this conversation.
Sure, I'll trade with you. No, I mean, like I will be glad to defer my seat to you if that's what you'd like.
Appreciate it.
You bet. Mr. Pulsifer and Ms. Nurse.
Just a quick point of order, Mr. Marini, she must do that because if we have 5 people at the board meeting, so somebody has to leave for you to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm aware. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't mean my prior comments to suggest that I don't think we should do this because we won't save money or that we can't save money. My point is, quite often when we evaluate this, we look at hourly rates. And we say, for example, as we've already discussed tonight, if we can get $25 an hour less, we should do it. The problem is $25 less off what number, and then how many hours get billed at that number. My point is just that we need to make sure that if we're going to make those decisions, it's not about comparing hourly rates, because every time you transition, you book a lot of extra hours, and that it may be that 25 costs us money, it may be 25 saves us money, but it's important to look beyond just an hourly rate or whatever, those kind of things, that there actually is a real savings and an appreciable savings. Because I think one of the problems with making that change, if there's not an appreciable savings, is you lose the continuity. Using legal, because that's what we've been discussing, we have a history of cases in different areas, whether it's special ed, human resource, whatever else. There's value in having a firm that is fully versed in our history. That's not to say they should be our lawyers forever, but there is a to me, again, the philosophical value of them knowing who we are, what we've been through, and what our history is, that no new firm can pick up, regardless of how much handover there is. So I think there's value there that's hard to measure, but it has to be part of that evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Mr. Kidd?
Thank you. I just had like a short comment about the whole lawyer situation that I thought everybody should consider. I don't know whether or not what we're talking about it only applies to legal advice and counseling or also representation, but if it also would apply to a lawyer that would be representing the board or the administration or whoever, I think it should also be considered that the American judicial system is not known for its speed, and switching, and if we're reviewing every year and consistently switching for whatever, like constant bidding, it could cause instability, and then it would be a question of, it would make communication very confusing, I feel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kidd. Ms. Nurse?
I just want to say we might not be ready to vote today, but I would hate for anybody to be discouraged to stop a conversation at the full board. I myself find that committees, although they're great and they serve a purpose, aren't the most effective way for the whole board to understand what is going on and to collaborate. So I feel like this is a good conversation, and I would like to hear, I mean, I don't see Mr. Oliver in any committee meetings. I don't see Mr. Marini or Mrs. Maroon. So I rarely get to hear their thoughts or opinions. So I think these conversations are good to have here because it's the only platform that we are able to. So, you know, if we continue until everybody has had their fill of what they want to say regarding this, that's fine. I don't mean to extend the evening, but I feel that these are probably the most productive places to have them so we can hear how everybody is feeling.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse. And actually, so thank you. I do appreciate that comment. And so looking forward also to our June or July meeting of the entire board, where we can kind of hash through what the board wants to set as the district goals for the upcoming school year. So Mr. Gillette?
It's just real, let me unmute. I am unmuted. What a surprise. So just to get an idea, look, we're talking about, I think the normalized year expense on attorney is like $120,000. Is that correct? And of course it could go higher to like up to like as high as like 150 if we're doing negotiations, multiple negotiations. So we're talking about 120 to 150. So of course it's an expense. It's a lot of money, but you'd have to have somebody come in here and do it for half as much, and then you wouldn't even get one teacher. You'd get, with benefits and everything. So, that's not happening. But even with the $120,000 a year, look, the negotiated agreements with the unions, those are millions of dollars we're talking about. The lawsuits, the special education settlements, the settlements with employees and things. These turn on, it's not just expense when these things happen. It's also saving the district possibly money also. So I mean, I'd be reluctant to look. I think we could change, absolutely. I'd have to see like that someone has a great reputation, has done tremendous work in other school districts. But I look, sometimes you think the grass is greener. I don't know. I think I don't know. We have somebody it can't be just on the expense. So that's, to me, I don't think you can quantify how much a different attorney is going to be in the end, what the legal fees are going to be in the end. It's going to be very difficult. We used to years ago put a cap. They say $120,000. That's the cap. But you always went over the cap. It's a soft cap because you have to spend for what you need. So we used to draw down from. I think we still do, don't we, Mr. Mahmood? We sort of draw down but when we go over, we have to go over. We go over, correct? So what are you going to say? You're going to have somebody new come in and say your cap is going to be 90,000. I don't know what we would get for that if we said that up front and said, I don't know what service we get for that. All right. So anyway, I'm going to defer to Mrs. Trujillo to decide how to proceed on this, and whatever she wants to be fine with me.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gillette. Ms. Stats?
I like a lot of the comments that we're all making. I think that is one of the advantages that this was brought up during the board meeting, because not only do we hear each other, but the public hears what we are saying as opposed to something being discussed in committee. But that can also, there are pros and cons to it. I think some of the nitty gritty can be discussed more easily in committee. And as Mr. Gillette said, and I think Mr. Pulsiver, it's not just about the expense, it's also about the quality of our service. I think we've had great professional services provided by our legal counsel. And Mr. Kidd made a good point about, the whatever litigation or issues, they can go on through and pass a current contract. So passing it on to a new firm could provide other problems. But I do appreciate that Mr. Marini brought this up, not just as the issue itself, but it brought to light some other issues about the whole discussion process as a whole board versus discussion in committee.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Mr. Marini?
That was just a lingering hand in the air.
Oh,
I'm going to agree to move it to committee for discussion. So I'm not going to ask for a vote today.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Mr. Oliver?
I just to reiterate, I don't mean to pick on legal because everybody's focusing on legal. This wasn't derived at legal. I think this was really derived at any large expenses that we're faced with on an annual basis, whether it be architect, accounting, legal, buses. I don't see the harm in getting an RFP on an annual basis. If there's nickels to save, we need to be aware of it. Now, again, that's a decision the administration will make and then make a recommendation to the board. Mr. LaPerry's firm is going to be $20,000 more a year than, some other firm, but we want to keep that continuity. That's a decision that we need to make as a board and as an administration. The same thing with the architect or the accountant. So again, I think every 3 years to bid this out is too long. Maybe every year is too often, but maybe there's some compromise, but I think it is something we have to look at. We need to bid out for large expenditures and vendors to make sure that everybody's being honest with their bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. So I guess you're recommending every 2 years. Then I saw Mr. Gillette. Mr. Kidd, please.
I don't know what the right answer is, but I think it's...
While we're on the topic of just conversation, just how these conversations develop, I was wondering if we could possibly raise in committee at the communication committee addressing alternate or improved methods for discussion between committees or between the committee and any individual board member that isn't present on that committee, because I find that it can many times be lackluster to a certain extent. It's it kind of feels difficult to make that communication to a certain extent. I appreciate having these board meetings, and they're wonderful. We've had some great conversations just today, but being able to have that extra level of communication, I think, would be useful, and investigating what avenues of communication are both legal, ethical, and effective would be useful.
Thank you, Mr. Kidd. So that kind of reminds me of Mr. Gillette's comments probably late last year. I don't even remember, Mr. Gillette, when you had proposed going to, and you mentioned it again tonight, having one meeting being a work meeting and then the next meeting being a action meeting, where at that work meeting there would be more opportunity for this sort of discussion when there is no necessarily pressing item on the action agenda that we wanted to cover in a timely fashion. So perhaps as governance meets again next month and we are charged with reviewing bylaw 155, and I thank Ms. Stats for offering her comments. Mr. Gillette, have you reviewed 155 and offered your comments? And I actually need to do that myself. I've looked at it, and Mr. Oliver also, so that we can have that kind of conversation as to perhaps a proposal for the board, seeing that there is interest from the board in having a more conversational type of meeting as Ms. Nurse had described earlier. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So now, before I forget, oh, Ms. Maroon, I'm so sorry. Hello.
Yeah, since I didn't, spend time with the bigger discussion, but I just wanted to note too that one of the things that I've noticed, and this is, I guess, on a positive note, me trying to at least end on a positive note, is that I think the communication, I know we're hearing that it's not good enough, but in comparison to the past years that I've been on, the bridging of all of the committees, I feel, has been taken care of in the communicator that Dr. Antunes has started to give us weekly, which is absolutely wonderful. And then I think from that point, it's our job to ask questions and to reach out to each other. And I think that may be something that, at our retreat, that we could probably do better with.
Thank you, Ms. Maroon. And I think that you might be a mind reader, because that was just something that Dr. Antunes was signaling in waves over this way. So thank you, Ms. Maroon. And I too want to compliment and thank Dr. Antunes for the very informative weekly communicators that really, I think, summarize a lot of the things that perhaps I may know because I have our weekly meetings with the superintendent, but that also includes the entire board on that. So I do appreciate that. So seeing no comments from the board, I will now turn it over to the public who is in the room right now with us, if there are any public comments. Oh, Mr. Goodhue. Let me find you here. Oh, here we go. Okay. And whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Henry Goodhue, Hillsborough Education Association. I'm not going to rehash things. I just want to add, there were some comments made about that the conversations that are taking place about leveling and what is or is not happening, that it's involving true collaboration. And I just want to add that from my perspective, or at least from what my members have conveyed to me, that has not truly been the case, that there are people who truly believe in this. They believe in the importance of this work and in doing it right. And there are those folks who are very concerned about it. And both are completely understandable. But as it stands, they're not being given the opportunity to truly collaborate or speak to this. They're being told that it's happening and that they're going along for the ride with it. And whether or not that's true, that may be a messaging issue. I don't discount that, but that is what is being messaged to people. You did hear some pieces of that. You heard some of that frustration, but in deference to my members who are currently involved in this process, I did want to clarify that point so that the board has that for their own edification as they consider going forward. And I just want to offer that it's not a question of the value of this work, it's a question of how you do it. And it's a question of doing it right so that it doesn't fall apart, that it doesn't become some parochial version where there's no level, but there's 3 levels within a classroom and everyone knows what, red, green, and blue are within that classroom. And I fear that if we don't take the time to truly unpack this and look at the real way to do it, that is what we're heading for. And then we're creating a check mark, we're not creating change. So I do urge everyone to take that into consideration. And I thank you for the conversation that you had tonight. And as an aside, I too would like to offer the HEA's gratitude to the IT department, to Mr. Handler, and to the folks who've been working tirelessly to get us back on track and to correct the issues that are plaguing the district, but being fixed. And they've done a phenomenal job to make sure that we're not going to school until June 30th. And we do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodhue, for your comments. Any other comment from the room? Okay, seeing none in the room, I will now promote L to panelist. Hello, Ms. Gaber-Bayless, whenever
Hi.
you're ready.
Good evening. Let me just bring up a couple of notes, sorry. All right, so as many know, I follow the Board of Education pretty closely and recall the idea of advanced math, at least, perhaps literacy also was mentioned perhaps 9 to 12 months ago initially. I would like to share a number of questions and comments that I hope that are addressed on the 29th and any future presentations to the public. First, I'd like it would be nice to describe how advanced math differs from regular math and pre-algebra, similar for the English side of it. Is it just going into more depth and additional projects, or are they completely different skills? I took a look at the 6th grade math curriculum and I searched for the word advanced, and I didn't see anything, but I might have missed where I needed to look to compare things. I don't know if academic support instruction will be removed and everyone will be in one classroom. If so, if you could explain what this looks like now and how it would look going forward, that would be appreciated. I'm also wondering what % of time might include higher ability students working with and teaching to other students as a way of that might be commonly used to better enforce the knowledge that they already have, but just wondering how much is that going to be done? Just in general, what would a day-to-day class look like? I realize that teachers have different ways of implementing what they are needing to teach, but an example might be appreciated. So for example, if pre-algebra and advanced math used to teach totally different skills, if you can explain that skill A will be taught to the whole class and then separately skill V will be taught to a small group, that would be good to know and understand. Let's see. So how often will students be evaluated and will groups be adjusted? If someone doesn't understand like factoring, but someone understands something else, will the groups be fluid so that they change every time a topic changes? And how will that be determined? Will it be determined from like a link-it test or something else? Also, what are the plans for a K-5 professional development for the teachers? Are you planning on doing more pull out and push in for higher ability students as you do for students who are not quite meeting the requirements right now? And then are we going to be identifying high ability students in K-5, looking at the scores across the district or some other way of doing that in order to nurture them ahead of time, providing them with challenges so they can develop the grit and learning how to learning how to struggle with a new skill instead of just coasting through until they finally hit higher math or higher something else. And then they don't have a good bag bag that's full of coping skills that they can reach into and pull out and persevere and get it done. You could also think, now that we know that technology works, you could do a virtual pullout class for the top 1 or 5% or 10%. So in general, are we only looking at this as a thing in 6th grade that will then fix everything magically? Or are you also looking at K-5, or when will you look at K-5? And I was suggesting that maybe you could add personnel who could do pullouts across the district. Also, in talking with friends, I've learned that many of our nearby districts, Bridgewater, Flemington, Hopewell, Montgomery, and Franklin, offer at least advanced math or pre-algebra in 6th grade, if not before. I believe.
Thank you, Ms. Gaber-Bayless. I'm sorry, the 3 minutes are up.
Okay, I almost done. Thanks anyway, though.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Oh, Ms. Desai. Ms. Desai, whenever you're ready.
Yes. Hi, thank you again for allowing me to speak a second time. While earlier I spoke about my concerns as a parent about the administration's decision on deep tracking, I would like to take this opportunity to voice my concerns on behalf of the staff. Differentiation means tailoring instruction to meet individual needs. Whether teachers differentiate content, process, products, or the learning environment, it's flexible grouping that makes this a successful approach to instruction. Or so that is what we as parents and teachers are being told. As of right now, we're not aware of the upcoming school year and what it would look like. So quote unquote, differentiating will not be helpful to the staff or its students. Does the district really expect our already overworked teachers to provide 3 different methods of teaching to their respective population? We have our advanced learners, we have our on-target learners. There'll be students who will be affected by COVID, the ASI students. Are we really expecting all these groups to be taught by one specific teacher? How will the advanced learners not be overlooked? Currently, my children's classes range from 25 to 27 kids. How is a teacher supposed to provide this differentiation type of learning to each of her students to the best of her ability? This is a disservice not only to the staff, but to our students, and not to mention our school ratings. The students who need help will also be suffering just as much as the students who need to be challenged. It is my dire request that the board really look into this, that the administration really review this and reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Desai. Are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, then I will close public comment and turn it over to the board if there are any questions. Seeing none, then I will point out the informational sections in item 14 and then ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much and have a good evening.